Hey, warriors, they lied to you. They told you that if you show up consistently, if you give your time, your attention, your loyalty, if you become emotionally available, people will respect you, people will value you, people will choose you. But look at your reality. The more you give, the less they appreciate. The more you stay, the easier you become to ignore. The more available you are, the less they fear losing you. And that's the part no one warns you about. Because deep down, human nature doesn't work the way you were taught. People don't obsess over what they already have. They obsess over what feels like it's slipping away. Let that sink in. Right now, you're not being chased. You're being managed, predicted, used. They know when you'll reply. They know you'll forgive. They know you won't leave. And because of that, they don't respect your presence. They depend on it, but they don't value it. Not because you're worthless, but because you made your value too easy to access. This is exactly what Niccolo Machiavelli warned about in The Prince. He didn't teach leaders to be kind. He taught them to be effective, and one brutal principle stands above the rest. Control is not about force. It's about perception, distance, and timing. A prince who is always available becomes weak in the eyes of others. A prince who creates distance becomes respected, even feared. Because when people cannot fully access you, they cannot fully control you. This is where most people fail. They think control comes from effort, from proving, from giving more. But real control doesn't come from force. It comes from what people feel they might lose. And once you understand this, everything changes. Because the moment your presence is no longer guaranteed, the moment your attention is no longer predictable, the moment your emotional availability disappears, something shifts inside them. First, they feel comfortable. Then, they feel confused. Then, they start to notice your absence. And that's when tension begins. Because silence speaks louder than explanation. Distance creates more emotion than presence ever could. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding power. Power is not loud. Power is not desperate. Power doesn't beg to be seen. Power is controlled absence. In this video, you're going to learn how to step back without looking weak, how to create psychological tension without saying a word, and how to make people feel your absence so deeply that they start chasing what they once ignored. Because when you become rare, you become valuable. And when your presence is no longer guaranteed, you become unforgettable. Before we move forward, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I control access. Number 1, remove unlimited access. The moment you become easy to reach, you become easy to replace. Most people don't realize this because it feels counterintuitive. You were trained to believe that being present makes you important, that replying fast shows interest, that always being there proves loyalty, but in reality, unlimited access destroys perceived value. When someone knows they can reach you anytime, when they know you will reply instantly, when they feel your attention is always waiting for them, your presence stops feeling special. It becomes normal, then expected, then ignored. This is the psychological trap. What is always available becomes mentally invisible. Think about it. Air is everywhere, yet no one notices it until it's gone. The same rule applies to your time, your energy, your attention. When you give it without limits, people stop recognizing its worth. This is where the Machiavellian shift begins. Access must be controlled, not given freely. You are not supposed to be available on demand. You are not supposed to respond instantly. You are not supposed to act like your entire life revolves around someone else's presence. Because the moment you do, you lose control of the dynamic. And control, as taught in The Prince, is everything. A ruler who allows constant access loses authority. A ruler who creates distance builds power. Why? Because access creates familiarity, and familiarity erases respect. When someone gets used to you always being there, they stop putting in effort. They stop valuing your time. They stop fearing your absence. And without that fear, there is no tension. Without tension, there is no obsession. So what do? You remove unlimited access, not with drama, not with announcements, not with emotional speeches. You do it silently. You stop replying instantly, not to punish, but to reset the pattern. You stop being emotionally available on demand, not to manipulate, but to protect your energy. You stop making yourself predictable, not to confuse, but to regain control. This is not about becoming cold. This is about becoming selective. Because there is a difference between being kind and being constantly accessible. Kindness is a choice. Accessibility is a weakness when it has no boundaries. Right now, many people treat you casually because they know you're always there. There's no urgency, no risk, no consequence. But the moment your availability changes, their behavior changes. At first, they won't notice. Then, they'll feel a small shift. Why didn't they reply yet? That's not like them. Are they busy or pulling away? And just like that, your absence enters their mind. This is how psychological tension begins. Not through words, not through explanations, but through controlled distance. And here's the key. This only works if it's real. If you delay responses but sit there waiting for their message, you're still controlled. If you pretend to be unavailable but emotionally depend on their reaction, you've changed nothing. True power comes when your life does not revolve around them anymore. You are busy, you are focused, you are building something that matters more than constant communication. Your attention becomes a limited resource, and limited resources are always valued higher. This is why high-value individuals are never constantly available, not because they're playing games, but because their time is already occupied with purpose. They don't need to prove their importance. Their absence proves it for them. Now understand this clearly. Removing access will feel uncomfortable at first, because you're breaking your own habit, not just theirs. You're used to replying fast. You're used to being there. You're used to feeling needed. And when you stop, it feels like you're losing something, but you're not losing. You're reclaiming control. Because every time you delay your response, you're telling your mind, my time is not controlled by others. Every time you choose not to be instantly available, you're reinforcing, my attention has value. And slowly, the dynamic shifts. They begin to wait. They begin to wonder. They begin to adjust to your pace instead of you adjusting to theirs. That's when power returns, not loudly, not aggressively, but silently. And once this shift happens, you'll notice something else. Their messages become more thoughtful. Their attention becomes more intentional. Their interest becomes more visible. Because now, access to you is no longer guaranteed, and people always respect what they can't fully control. So don't announce it, don't explain it, just change the pattern, become less available and more valuable. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I am not always available. Number 2, break predictability. If they can read you, they can relax around you. And the moment someone feels completely comfortable predicting you, they stop thinking about you. This is where attraction dies, not because you lack value, But because your behavior has become a pattern, they no longer need to question. Predictability creates psychological comfort, and comfort removes tension. Without tension, there is no curiosity. Without curiosity, there is no obsession. This is one of the most overlooked truths about human behavior. People don't fixate on what they understand completely. They fixate on what they can't fully figure out. And right now, if someone can predict exactly how you will act, when you will reply, how you will respond emotionally, what you will tolerate, then there is nothing left to discover about you. You've become a closed book. This is why being consistent in the wrong way destroys your power. Consistency in values is strength, but consistency in behavior patterns, especially in attention, makes you easy to decode. And once you are decoded, you are controlled. This is where the Machiavellian move comes in. Become unreadable. Not fake, not confusing for the sake of chaos, but strategically unpredictable, because unpredictability forces attention. When your behavior doesn't follow a clear pattern, the mind cannot relax. It starts asking questions. It starts observing more closely. It starts trying to understand you. And that mental effort is the beginning of obsession. Think about this. If you always reply instantly, they expect it. If you always show the same level of interest, they assume it. If you always react emotionally in the same way, they rely on it. But the moment that pattern breaks, everything changes. You reply late one day, early the next. You show attention sometimes, then pull it back. You stay calm when they expect emotion, and silent when they expect words. Now they don't know what to expect. And that uncertainty pulls their focus toward you. This is not about playing random games. This is about removing their ability to control the rhythm. Because when your behavior is predictable, they set the pace. But when your behavior is fluid, they start adjusting to you. That's where power shifts. In The Prince, the idea is clear. A ruler should never be fully understood, because once people believe they can predict you, they lose respect for your authority. Uncertainty creates caution. Caution creates attention. Attention creates influence. And influence is what you want. Right now, many people treat you casually because they already know your script. They know you'll respond. They know you'll stay. They know you won't change. So, they invest less effort. But when your pattern breaks, they lose that certainty. And the human mind hates uncertainty. It tries to solve it. Why are they acting different? Did something change? Are they losing interest? Did I do something wrong? Now you are no longer background noise. You become a question in their mind. And questions create mental loops. Those loops replay your last message, your last interaction, your silence, your change. That's how attention builds without you chasing it. But here's the critical part. This only works if your unpredictability comes from control, not emotion. If you act different because you're hurt, it shows. If you act inconsistent because you're seeking a reaction, it exposes weakness. But when your shifts come from internal stability, it feels intentional. And intentional behavior commands respect. You are not reacting, you are choosing. That difference changes everything. You respond when you decide, not when you feel pressured. You give attention when it aligns with your focus, not when someone demands it. You stay calm regardless of their behavior, not pulled by it. This creates a new image in their mind. They can no longer place you in a box. And when someone cannot categorize you, they start studying you. That's when intrigue begins. Understand this clearly. You don't need to say anything. Your behavior communicates everything. Silence at the right moment says more than explanation. A delayed response creates more impact than a fast one. A calm reaction confuses more than an emotional one, because now they don't know how to read you, and when they can't read you, they can't control you. That's the goal. Not attention for validation, but attention that comes from curiosity, because curiosity is stronger than attraction. Attraction fades, curiosity stays. So stop being easy to predict. Stop giving the same responses. Stop following the same patterns. Stop making your behavior comfortable for others. Break the rhythm, not randomly, but deliberately. Because when you become unpredictable, you become mentally engaging. And when you become mentally engaging, you become unforgettable. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I am unpredictable. Number 3, withdraw without announcement. Most people don't know how to leave. They don't withdraw. They perform withdrawal. They don't create distance. They announce it. They don't disappear. They explain. And the moment you explain your absence, you lose its power. Because now it's no longer mysterious. It's no longer impactful. It becomes predictable, controlled, and easy to dismiss. This is where people get it wrong. They think saying, "I need space," or "I won't talk for a while," creates importance. But in reality, it exposes intention. It shows you are trying to trigger a reaction. It shows you want to be noticed. It shows you still need their attention, even in your absence. And that need destroys authority. Because power never announces itself. It moves quietly. It shifts silently. It changes the dynamic without asking for permission. This is the Machiavellian move. Disappear without warning. No emotional speeches. No long explanations. No dramatic exits. Just absence. Because silence forces interpretation. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you remove your constant presence, the moment your energy disappears without a trace, the other person is left alone with their thoughts. And that's where the real effect begins. Because when there is no explanation, the mind fills the gap. Why did they go quiet? Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Are they pulling away for good? These questions don't come from what you said. They come from what you didn't say. And that's the difference between weak distance and powerful absence. Weak distance seeks reaction. Powerful absence creates reflection. In The Prince, control is not built by constant communication. It is built by managing perception. A ruler who speaks too much reveals too much. A ruler who explains every move becomes predictable. But a ruler who moves in silence controls the narrative, because people begin to guess. And when they guess, they project. They project fear. They project curiosity. They project importance. All without you saying a single word. This is why silent withdrawal is so effective. You are not telling them what to think. You are letting their own mind create the story. And their mind will always create something stronger than your explanation ever could. Now understand something important. This is not about disappearing to punish someone. If your intention is revenge, it will show. If your intention is to make them chase, it will feel forced. True withdrawal comes from detachment. You are not leaving to create drama. You are leaving because your presence is no longer being valued correctly. That difference changes everything. Because now your absence is not a tactic, it is a standard. You are not saying, "Notice me." You are saying without words, "I am not available where I am not valued." And that message hits deeper than anything you could ever say. At first, they might not react. They might feel relief. They might enjoy the space. They might assume you'll come back like always. But then something shifts. The silence stretches. Your usual patterns don't return. Your energy doesn't reappear. Your presence remains gone. And now the questions begin. Because humans are not designed to ignore sudden absence, especially from someone who was always there. Your silence becomes louder than your presence ever was. They start replaying conversations. They start analyzing behavior. They start searching for meaning. And the more they search, the deeper they fall into their own thoughts. That's when your absence becomes real. Not because you said something powerful, but because you said nothing at all. But here's the key. You must be able to hold that silence. Most people break. They disappear, then come back too early. They go quiet, then send a message to check the reaction. They withdraw, then explain themselves out of discomfort. And the moment you break, the power disappears, because now your absence looks like a tactic, not a standard. And people can always detect the difference. True silence requires discipline. You must be okay with not knowing what they're thinking. You must be okay with not controlling the outcome. You must be okay with letting the space exist without filling it, because that space is where your value grows. Every moment you stay silent, your presence becomes more noticeable. Every moment you don't explain, your image becomes stronger. Every moment you don't return, your absence becomes heavier, until eventually they feel it. Not as a message, not as a statement, but as a loss. And loss creates emotion. Emotion creates memory. Memory creates obsession, all from silence. So don't announce your distance. Don't explain your absence. Don't perform your withdrawal. Just step back and let the silence speak. Because the most powerful move you can make is the one no one hears, but everyone feels. Drop this affirmation in the comments. Silence is power. Number 4, create emotional scarcity, not physical distance. Most people think distance is physical. They believe if they stop showing up, stop texting, stop being around, that alone will make someone miss them. But here's the truth. You can be physically gone and still emotionally available. And if you're still emotionally available, nothing really changes. Because real attachment does not live in physical presence. It lives in emotional access. That means someone can lose your physical presence, but if they still feel your validation, your reassurance, your emotional support, they haven't lost you. They still have control. This is the mistake most people make. They leave the room, but not the connection. They create space, but not scarcity. They disappear physically, but stay emotionally reachable. And because of that, there is no tension. Because tension only begins when emotional supply is cut. Not reduced, not delayed, cut. This is the Machiavellian shift. You don't just step away from their presence. You step away from feeding their emotions. Because attention is not the strongest currency. Emotion is. When someone knows they can still get your validation, still get your reassurance, still get your emotional reaction, they don't feel your absence. They feel your distance, but not your loss. And distance without loss has no impact. So, what does emotional scarcity actually look like? It means you stop giving constant validation. No more reassuring them every time they feel uncertain. No more boosting their ego whenever they expect it. No more emotional support on demand. Not out of coldness, but out of control. Because when emotional access is unlimited, it becomes taken for granted. They stop valuing your words. They stop appreciating your energy. They stop respecting your presence. Why? Because they believe it will always be there. And when something feels permanent, it loses importance. But the moment emotional supply is removed, everything changes. Now they feel the difference. They notice the silence where your validation used to be. They feel the absence of your reassurance. They sense the shift in your energy. And that creates something powerful, emotional tension, because now they are not receiving what they were used to. And the human mind reacts strongly to that. Why aren't they supporting me like before? Why do they feel different? Did I lose something? This is where the dynamic shifts. Before, they were consuming your emotional energy. Now, they are searching for it. That's the turning point. And it doesn't come from distance alone. It comes from cutting emotional access. This is exactly why the prince emphasizes control over perception. If people feel they have unlimited access to your emotions, they believe they control you. But when your emotional responses become limited, measured, selective, they lose that control. And when control is lost, attention increases, because now they have to earn what was once freely given. And people always value what requires effort. Now understand this clearly. This is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. This is about becoming disciplined with your emotional output. You still care, you still feel, but you don't give it away freely. You don't react instantly. You don't comfort automatically. You don't validate without reason. You choose when and how to express emotion. And that choice creates power, because now your emotional presence becomes rare, and rare things are always valued higher. Before, your support was expected. Now, it becomes meaningful. Before, your validation was constant. Now, it becomes impactful. Before, your emotional energy was taken for granted. Now, it becomes something they seek. That's the shift. Not from presence to absence, but from abundance to scarcity. And scarcity changes behavior, because when someone feels they might lose access to your emotional world, they start investing more. They become more attentive, more careful, more aware, because now they are no longer secure in having you. And insecurity creates effort. But here's the key. You must remain consistent in your restraint. If you cut emotional access, then give it back too easily, the effect disappears, because now it feels temporary, not real. True emotional scarcity comes from stability. You are not reacting based on their behavior. You are acting based on your standards. You're not giving because they expect it. You're giving when it aligns with your control. That difference is everything, because now your emotional energy is not a reaction, it is a choice. And choice is power. So don't just leave physically. Leave emotionally. Not in a dramatic way, not in a painful way, but in a controlled, disciplined, intentional way. Because the moment they stop receiving your emotional supply is the moment they start feeling your absence. And once they feel that absence, they can't ignore you anymore. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My emotions are limited. Number 5. Let uncertainty do the work. You've been trained to explain yourself, to make sure people understand your intentions, to clarify your silence, to remove confusion before it grows. You think this builds trust, but in reality, it destroys intrigue, because the moment someone fully understands you, the moment every action is explained, the moment there are no unanswered questions, there is nothing left to think about. And when there is nothing left to think about, you disappear from their mind. This is the hidden danger of overclarity. It removes mystery, it removes tension, it removes the need for them to figure you out. And without that need, there is no mental engagement. This is where most people lose power without realizing it. They feel a shift, so they explain. They go quiet, so they justify. They pull back, so they send a message to clear things up. And in doing so, they erase the very effect they were creating. Because uncertainty is not your enemy, it is your advantage. The human mind is wired to chase answers. When something feels incomplete, it loops. When something feels unclear, it lingers. When something is unresolved, it grows in importance. That's why people obsess over unanswered messages, over sudden silence, over behavior that doesn't fully make sense. Not because of what happened, but because of what wasn't explained. This is the Machiavellian move. Allow confusion to exist. Don't rush to clarify your absence. Don't explain every shift in your behavior. Don't make it easy for others to fully understand you, because the moment you do, you lose the psychological edge. In The Prince, the idea is simple but powerful. A leader should never reveal everything, because complete transparency removes control. When people can fully predict and understand you, they stop respecting your position. But when there is uncertainty, they become cautious. They observe more. They think more. They invest more mental energy trying to interpret you. And that mental investment creates attachment. Right now, many people don't think about you deeply, not because you lack value, but because there is nothing left to figure out. You've explained everything. Your emotions are clear. Your intentions are obvious. Your behavior is predictable. There is no mystery. So their mind moves on. But the moment uncertainty enters, everything changes. You don't reply like usual. You don't explain why. You don't clarify your mood. You don't give them the answers they expect. Now, their mind has a gap, and the mind hates gaps, so it tries to fill them. Are they losing interest? Did I do something wrong? Why are they acting different? What are they thinking? These questions don't come from your words. They come from your silence, and that silence becomes powerful, because now you exist in their thoughts without doing anything. They replay your last interaction. They analyze your tone. They search for meaning in small details, all because you didn't explain. This is how uncertainty works. It creates a loop, and the more the loop runs, the more you stay in their mind. This is not manipulation. This is understanding human psychology. People value what they invest in, and when someone invests mental energy trying to understand you, you become more important to them. But here's the critical part. You must be comfortable with not being understood. Most people can't handle this. They feel uncomfortable when someone misinterprets them. They feel the need to correct, to clarify, to explain, because they want control over how they are perceived. But true power comes from letting go of that need. You don't control their thoughts by explaining yourself. You influence their thoughts by giving them something to think about. And sometimes, that something is silence. So, when you pull back, don't explain it. When you change your behavior, don't justify it. When you create distance, don't clarify it. Let them wonder. Let them question. Let them sit with the uncertainty, because that uncertainty is doing the work for you. It's creating tension. It's creating curiosity. It's creating focus. And all of that leads to one thing: obsession. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed their mind to create it. So stop over-explaining. Stop trying to be fully understood. Stop removing every doubt. Because doubt is where attention lives. And attention is where power begins. Number 6. Reclaim power through detachment. Everything you've learned so far leads to this point, because none of it works if you still need them. You can delay your replies. You can become unpredictable. You can disappear without explanation. You can cut emotional access. You can create uncertainty. But if deep down you are still waiting for their reaction, watching for their response, hoping they notice, you are still controlled. And control is not about what you do on the outside, it's about what you depend on inside. This is the final shift. Detachment, not distance, not silence, not strategy. Detachment, because the moment you stop needing someone's validation, they lose the ability to influence your behavior, and that is real power. Most people don't understand this. They think power comes from making others chase them, from triggering attention, from creating reactions. But if you are still emotionally affected by those reactions, you are not in control. You are just playing a different role in the same game. True power is when you no longer need the outcome. You are not waiting for a message. You are not checking for signs. You are not hoping for validation. You are stable, with or without them. This is what makes you dangerous. Because now your actions are no longer driven by emotion. They are driven by choice. In The Prince, the strongest rulers are not those who react emotionally. They are the ones who remain composed, regardless of what happens around them. Because emotion makes you predictable. Need makes you controllable. But detachment makes you untouchable. Right now, many people can influence you without even trying. They reply late and you feel it. They act distant and you react. They change behavior and you chase clarity. Why? Because you are still emotionally dependent on their response. And that dependency gives them power over you, whether they use it or not. This is why detachment is not optional. It is necessary, because until you remove that dependency, every other strategy becomes weak. You are still reacting, still adjusting, still seeking something from them. And the moment someone senses that, they know they have control. So how do you detach? You stop seeking. Not physically, but mentally. You stop looking for their attention. You stop needing their approval. You stop waiting for their validation. You become internally complete. Your mood does not depend on their message. Your confidence does not depend on their behavior. Your value does not depend on their recognition. This changes everything, because now your actions are clean. You reply when you want, not when you need. You step back because you choose, not because you're hurt. You stay silent because you are in control, not because you're waiting. This creates a different presence, a presence that cannot be manipulated, because there is nothing to pull. No emotional strings, no hidden expectations, no dependency. And when someone realizes they can't control you, they start losing control of themselves. They try harder, they think more, they invest more, because now the dynamic has flipped. Before, you were reacting to them. Now, they are reacting to you. But here's the truth most people avoid. Detachment is uncomfortable because it forces you to face yourself. Without distractions, without validation, without external reassurance, you are left with your own thoughts, your own standards, your own sense of worth. And if that foundation is weak, detachment feels empty. That's why most people run back. They reconnect too quickly. They seek attention again. They break their own silence because they are not ready to stand alone. But if you stay, if you hold that position, something powerful happens. You become stable, not emotionally numb, but emotionally controlled. You feel, but you're not ruled by those feelings. You care, but you're not dependent. You engage, but you're not attached. And that balance creates real power. Because now, your presence is a choice, not a need. And people can feel that. They sense when someone is not chasing, not seeking, not depending. It creates respect, because you are no longer trying to gain something. You are simply deciding what deserves your energy. That's when everything shifts. You are not trying to be valued. You become valuable, without effort, without explanation, without force. Because detachment removes desperation, and where there is no desperation, there is control. So stop needing reactions. Stop waiting for validation. Stop depending on their attention to feel important. Because the moment you stop needing them is the moment they start noticing you. When you starve them of you, something shifts. At first, nothing happens. They feel comfortable, even relieved, because your constant presence is no longer there to demand attention. Then slowly, something changes. They notice the silence. They feel the difference. They realize something is missing, and that's when confusion begins. Why are they not the same? Why does it feel different? Why do I feel this gap? And that confusion turns into focus, because now your absence is louder than your presence ever was. They start thinking about you more, replaying moments, questioning their assumptions, and before they even realize it, that focus becomes obsession, not because you changed your worth, but because you changed your availability. That's the truth most people never understand. You don't become valuable by giving more. You become valuable by being less accessible. Most people spend their lives trying to be liked, trying to be understood, trying to be accepted. But the ones who become unforgettable, they understand control, they understand timing, they understand distance, they understand when to step back and let silence speak. As the Prince teaches, if people can access you easily, they control you. But if they fear losing access, you control the dynamic. That is the shift. So stop proving your value. Stop explaining your silence. Stop being emotionally available on demand. Start choosing where your energy goes, because your attention is not cheap. Your presence is not unlimited. Your emotions are not for everyone. Become rare, become distant, become controlled. And if this message changed the way you see your own power, take a second right now, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Because once you understand this, you don't go back to being easy. You don't go back to being predictable. You don't go back to being controlled. Because in the end, people don't chase connection. They chase what they cannot control.